Hello, everyone. It is May 23rd, 2018. And you're looking at this background, and I'm sure you're saying, well, that doesn't look like your place, Ed. And you would be right. I am at my brother's place up here in Largo, Florida, until Monday, until Memorial Day. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Joyce. Joyce, nice texting back and forth with you earlier today. Kelly, Joyce, and Shuri, going to get to your questions before the show is over. Shuri, I can guarantee you that. As you are tuning in here, you're seeing the background with the fan and the kind of that southwestern motif going on. Hello, Lois, Dee Dee, Charlie, what's going on? I'm over at my brother's place. And hello, Diane. And Largo, Florida, it's a little bit inland and north from where I live in Madeira Beach. I would say it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to get here from where I live down at the beach. Hello, Janet. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And Sherry. So we're just chilling out. If you'd like to see, maybe some of you saw some of my posts earlier today about the reason that I'm over here. My brother and his wife don't need their house sat. What they really need is they need this little baby watched for a little while. That's Kobe. He's hanging out. He just can sit there. He can sit there and stare at that wall all night. But his name is Kobe. He is going to be 13 years old in June. And as you can probably tell by that picture, he's a big puppy. He's about 90 pounds. And I think that the vet told my brother and his wife that had they not had him neutered, he probably would have been more like 130. He's part, I think, pit bull and Labrador or something. He's like mixed like 3 or 4 different breeds of dogs. And he has a very unique color to him. For some of you who are just tuning in, right, this is the last time I'm going to show him. You can tell he has a very unique color to him. And really, if he had a mane on him, he would look like a lion. That's the kind of color that he is. And he just kind of hangs out. I would not call him the most personable dog, to be honest. I mean, he's well behaved. I showed the puppy again, Shannon. I think twice is plenty, but okay, one more time. There's the puppy. Last time. All right, right there. There's the puppy right there. Kobe is his name. K-O. No, he's not named after the basketball player. K-O-B-I-E is his name. And hello to everyone. Janet, Melinda, Dorothy, Bobby, Shannon, Stephanie, thank you for all tuning in. Angela. And I'm sorry, that's the last time I'm going to show the little pup unless he has to go outside. But, for being a big dog and being almost 13 years old, he's in really good health. And hello, Kristin and Jason. No, he's not a bull mastiff cross ridgeback. No, he's not, Jason, but I could see why you might think that. If he was looking at us, you'd probably have a better idea. But 90 pounds, 120, 130 pounds had he not been neutered. The vet says his head would have been like 1/3 bigger. And, he's just likes to hang out. Like I said, he doesn't like to cuddle too much and things like that. He just likes to sit, lie there, do his own thing, go outside, get in the sun, come back into the air conditioning, back and forth. The biggest problems he has right now is with his hips, and he has a hard time getting up and lying down. But once he's up, he can run still pretty fast, maneuver and everything, but it's just getting up and down are the problems. He can walk just fine, though. Yes, he's my new co-host, right, Shannon? Yeah. And Kristen, Angela, Barb, Christopher, thanks for everybody tuning in tonight. So I'm over here watching Kobe until Monday, and I can assure you that I'll be talking, if you're friends with me on Facebook, I'll be talking about him as I go from now through Monday. And I like it because when my brother and his wife are going to have me coming over here, they stock the refrigerator with food. They get me ginger ale. You know, my sister-in-law makes this like pasta salad stuff that I really like. She made a huge tub of it, so it's nice. And so I go over here. It's almost like a little vacation for me, but of course I'm still working every day. And so he and I are just hanging out. And so that's what we're doing over here. And I came over here this morning. Last night I came over here actually. And I drove my brother and his sister to the airport this morning. And they flew back to Pennsylvania. They're going to a wedding this weekend. And my brother will be back on Monday night. So if you're tuning in right now and you're seeing all this stuff that you don't usually see in the background, this is where I am. I'm in Largo, Florida at my brother and his wife's place. Hello, Bev. Good to see you tonight. So that's what's going on. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Lots and lots to talk about. And of course, I'm washing clothes when I'm over here. They have an Alexa, which is right over here. I don't know if you can hear. Alexa, what time is it? Let's try that one more time. Alexa, what time is it? The time is 9:06 p.m. So there's Alexa talking to Alexa. I don't know if you can hear that or not. And I'm washing some clothes and doing some things. My disc golf team lost on Monday night. I played well. My partner played well. Rest of the team, little. So we didn't win the championship, but we came in second. Considering how we started off the season, that's pretty good. Shuri says, I dog sit too, and I always feel like I'm on vacation. Right. That's kind of what it's like, Shuri. You're right. You're right. So that's what's going on. And I was looking at my hair before we started tonight, and I'm like, I think I got to get a haircut. So I got to put that on my agenda before next week's live show. So that's about what's been going on just personally with me. So let's get to a question. Got some good questions before I turned on the live show tonight. So I'm going to take a question from Dorothy. Dorothy asked me, what would I do if I personally found a missing person and the person told me to keep it a secret? And I think Dorothy, she usually tunes in on Wednesday night. So so Dorothy, I'm going to take your question first. What would I do if I personally found a missing person and the person told me to keep it quiet? First of all, I don't think that I would be able to do that. All right. I'm going to guess that it would depend on the circumstances. What I thought I knew about the circumstances, what went on, it would depend on, there would be a lot of factors. Hello, Emily. Thanks for tuning in tonight. My assistant, Emily, doing a great job. It would depend on a variety of factors. But what I know I would do for sure, no matter what the circumstances were, would be I would make it clear that if that person wants to say missing, that's okay. But I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure no more resources, police time, money, anything else is spent trying to find that person. Okay? I would never keep it so secret that people are continuing to go out in searches and the police are still trying to question people and doing all those things. I think that would be wrong. I would discreetly go to the police. Hopefully I would have some proof that I ran into this person, and I would say, you know what, I found this person, and this person does not want to be found. But I can assure you this person is in good condition. They left their life. I don't know exactly what the reasons are, but there is no way I would be able to keep my mouth shut and allow people to continue to work to find that person when other people who are really truly missing or maybe murder, that resources get taken away from all of these other cases. That would be my attitude. I know that for sure. Once again, how deeply I would get into all of that depends on what I think I know about the circumstances. Was it a young person who ran away? Was it a guy who left his wife and ran off with some other woman? It's going to depend. It's going to really, really, really depend. Is it a woman who got out of an abusive relationship when was afraid of the man, went from one coast to the other, changed her name, etc.? It would depend on the circumstances, but all I know is I would make sure that no more resources were spent trying to find that person. Instead, I would make sure that those resources went in other directions. Now, I can tell you this, and we're going to get into this, I guess, in a little bit. Now, if the person is actually on the run from the law, then I would turn the person in. If there was a warrant out for that person's arrest, there would be very little, I think, that the person would be able to tell me that I would keep my mouth shut. All right, but if it's just your average missing person case, person doesn't have any warrants out for the arrest or anything, then I go back to what I said before. So, Dorothy, I hope that answers your question. Now, Kristen says, I actually found a missing person. You told the people looking she was safe and didn't want to be found. She was a runaway, but we didn't know. No. So, I think that I probably would take a similar attitude, Kristen. But, what comes to mind is these people who we find out have run away and then they pop up somewhere down the road, 10 years, 20 years, people searching for them, money being raised, cops spent, and then you find out the person's living somewhere else and they know that people are looking for them and they never say a thing. That drives me nuts. It just does. And it just does. So Kristen's saying you told the people looking, that she was safe. Okay, good. That's what I would do too. I wouldn't reveal the person's location or name or what they're looking like if they changed their appearance or anything. I wouldn't do that. But I would let people know, and I would somehow try to get proof that the person is alive and okay. Angie, welcome. Thanks for tuning in tonight. But once again, if the person is on the lam or something, then I'm probably going to turn that person in. Shani, thanks for tuning in tonight. So I answered that question and just want to get some things out of the way. Hold on. Brought the books with me. Volume 1. Volume 2, Volume 3, have you gotten them yet? Whether in ebook or print form. Kobe's looking at me now. Here, Kobe. There's Kobe. See him right there? There he is. There's his face. Hey, baby. What's going on, baby? Huh? All right. There's Kobe. But we got the books. And if you've bought one of the books and haven't reviewed it on Amazon, I wish you would go and do that. 1, 2, or 3. Doesn't matter to me. I would appreciate it if you got it off of Amazon, that you went back to Amazon, logged in, and gave whatever book a nice review, whether it's an ebook or a print edition. Hello, Jill. Hello, Jonna. Good to see you tonight. Kristen, I didn't tell the parents where she was because I did some more digging. She ran from abuse. Kristen, I get it. Totally get it. Carrie, handsome. Hey, Kobe, people think you're handsome. The handsome boy, and he is handsome. My brother says yes, believes he's a very handsome dog as well. He's, like I said, he likes his territory, likes to run free a little bit, but generally he's pretty well behaved. And he's, of course, calmed down now that he's almost 13 years old. But we got the books. Wearing my shirt, brought one of my Unfound shirts with me, the black one, of course, with all the pictures on the back for the first year, and we're slowly getting toward the end of season 2, which will be the end of July. And then we'll have season 2 shirts out as well. So be looking for that. That's going to be in a few months. Jill, you said, yo, just got out of a session. Okay, Jill, well, welcome. And then, of course, Patreon and PayPal. I was finding out that maybe people who, if you're tuning in from another country, you may have some issues with Patreon, and I'm trying to sort that out. A listener from Ireland has been trying to use Patreon. Our card keeps getting rejected for some reason, and we're trying to sort that out. So if you've had any issues like that, you're not alone. And please let me know if you have had any issues, and I will do what I can to work with Patreon to straighten those things out. I'm still not sure what the problem is exactly, but I've been told that a couple times now since we started Patreon. I'm going to say way back in October. But Patreon and PayPal, if you'd like to contribute to the program, as I always say, that money goes directly to the guests. It provides the books. Book volume 3 that Bobby, who I know is in here, Amy Lacey, Darlene Pitts, and some of the other guests from volume 3, I sent their books out last week. You, the listeners, make that possible. You do it. And I know the listeners thank you, the guests thank you, and I deeply thank you as well. You make it possible. That's where the money goes. And I think you've seen some of the responses. I know Bobby last week wrote something that was very, very, at the end I was blushing that Bobby wrote something about myself, and I deeply appreciate that, Bobby. Hello, Shelly. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Let's take another question, and then I want to get into some news because, of course, I do have a crazy story for all you. Going to take another question. I'm going to take one from Shuri. What did I do before? You're welcome, Bobby. You're welcome, Bobby. What did I do before Unfound? Okay. Let's see if I can go through this. I'm originally from Leechburg, Pennsylvania. I graduated in 1989, so you can figure out how old I am. I'm just going to tell you, I'm 47 years old. I'll be 48 on August 1st. From there, I went to Grove City College. It's a private school in Northwestern Pennsylvania. I graduated in 93 with a business degree. From there, I went and worked for my family in the car business. I was a car salesman, if you can believe it, for about 4.5 years. 4.5 years, yeah. And then May of 1998, I moved to Las Vegas, just past the 20th anniversary of me moving there. I lived with my buddy Brad and his future wife, Andrea. And while there, hello, Laura. You love the podcast. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Kristin, will Kimber episode on be in a book? Yes, at some point, Kristin, but it's going to be fairly well down the line before that happens. But yes, it's going to happen. First job I got in Las Vegas was I worked for 7-Eleven as a field consultant. Hated it. Worst job I ever had. And from there, I went in the totally opposite direction. I worked production assistant on some TV shows and some movies in Las Vegas. And eventually, starting in May of 2000 to October 2004, I was an actor at Star Trek: The Experience. And while working there, I made a couple independent films, which were horrible, but it was fun. You can find me if you go to imdb.com and put in my name. You'll find me there. I think there's a picture from like about 2006 there. See me with like longer hair from about 12 years ago, which is kind of funny. So I worked at Star Trek: The Experience. So most of my, and from there I became a stage manager for a Rat Pack show and a magic show. And I did that from 2005 through about 2010. But then during that time, I also had a day job where I worked on printers and fax machines because I'm good, like mechanically working and tinkering with things. And so I had like 2 or 3 jobs going at one time. So I was really busy. Hello, Andrea. How are you doing tonight? Andrea, if you're wondering, somebody asked me what I did before I started Unfound, and I'm going through all of this. And so most of my friends, when I talk about my friends from Las Vegas, most of my friends are in entertainment in some way. They were, they were actors or models, comedians, magicians, all singers, you name it. Those types of people, 90% of my friends who are more than that, 95% of the friends that I made in Las Vegas are that's what they did for a living. And most of them still do work in entertainment in some way. Tara, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining in. A Leechburg person like myself, Tara, thank you for tuning in. And then I just stopped all of that cold turkey and I started writing some fiction books. I moved here to Florida to be closer to family, kind of like my brother. Like I said, of course, I'm staying in my brother's house right now. And I've always, sure you're following up with why the interest in the missing. I've always been interested in mysteries. Hold on one second. Kobe wants to go outside. All right, boy, you're going outside. All right. I see you standing here. There you go, baby. All right. Okay, so I had to put the boy outside. So from there, I've always been interested. I spent a lot of time on Web Sleuths way back in the day. Read a lot of books about disappearances and unsolved mysteries and things. What fiction books? I really don't want to get into that right now, Sherry, because they're not on Amazon anyway, so I'm not going to talk about them. I'll just leave it at that for now. But I've always been interested. And I have a lot of, working in entertainment. I have a lot of public speaking experience. Working with people who had improv classes and everything else. And that really helps me when I do a program like this. That, I can think of things off the top of my head. And I just have always been interested in mysteries. And, of course, as some of you know, I did a true crime podcast before this one. And then later I started this one doing it just on my own. And missing persons cases, I think, have always been interesting to me because they are the toughest kinds of true crime cases. All right, that's my personal belief, and I like to challenge myself. So missing persons cases has always been number one in my mind. And with technology, I think finally catching up to my interest and a lot of people's interests. We know how big true crime podcasting has become in the last 5 years. Shelley, I'm not going to answer that question either, Shelley, because I really don't want to get into that at this point. I think that if you look for it, you'll find it. I'm just going to leave it at that. But that's my background. So I think that what helps my background is my reading background and my entertainment background of speaking, being able to put, having written some screenplays and having, worked with people, one-on-one conversations, things like that. Those are the talents, along with me just kind of liking to work on my own. I think that's why this kind of program works well for me. Other people like working, co-hosting, which of course I did for a little while, but didn't work out. Me, I like to work on my own. And I love having the one-on-one conversations with people. And I'm not a very good manager of people, but I'm a good manager of ideas. And that's what I've discovered over time. So I don't like to be the boss of people. On the other hand, I don't like taking orders either. So dealing with ideas and facts, information, and things seems to be my strong suit. And that's what I try to bring in Unfound. But most of my friends, and I plan to move back to Las Vegas one of these days. I'm sure if I go right back there, I'll fall right in line with all of my entertainment friends all over again. So I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades. I've been all over. Car salesman, printer technician, 7-Eleven, actor, model, writer, stage manager. I've done a lot of different things. Just a lot of different things. I think somebody asked, do I prefer missing children or missing adults? It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Shelley asked me, Lots of folks get nervous improvising, but not you. What does make you nervous? Well, recently playing disc golf has been making me very nervous, Shelley, to be honest with you. I haven't been playing well, and I've been getting some nerves on the tee, and the disc has been flying, but I've been working on that. Sherry, thank you. I'm not going to read that out, but yes, thank you. So that's what makes me nervous. But, you know, I know that I got over my public speaking and improvising and things because when I worked at Star Trek, when the ride would break down, it was a simulation ride. It was a show and then a simulation ride at the end. Well, if the ride broke down, we as actors, we were required to stay in character. So I had to pretend, you know, I have a group of like 27 people. It's just me and the guests in a small room, and I have to figure out how to entertain them, and I'm not allowed to break character. I have to pretend that it's the 24th century, I'm in Starfleet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you broke character, you could actually get fired. So, and it was a good job. It paid well. I made a lot of friends there. So I wanted to keep the job. So you learn how to improvise very quickly. And those people were paying good money to get into the show, and they want entertained. And a lot of them are Star Trek people. So you better know your stuff. So, and not that it broke down often, but you definitely had to be prepared. You never knew when that was going to be. So that's what's really helped me with my speaking ability and talking to people and relying on that. And that was really on the job training. You know, I had no previous training for that, whereas a lot of other people did. First time the ride ever broke down, here I am with 27 people, and I have to entertain them maybe for 15, 20 minutes till they get it fixed. You better start talking to people, and you better know how to pretend, or you're going to be in big trouble and people are going to want their money back. So that's where I get my speaking, public speaking, improvisational skills from. Lavonda, welcome tonight. I want to get to this because this is going to, thank you for the questions. I'll try to get to some more before we're done, but I got to hit this. If you are part of the discussion group, and I'm going to say probably almost all of you are, you know about Kimberly Kessler, this woman who was caught here in Florida yesterday. She most likely murdered a coworker. The coworker disappeared, and then they caught Kimberly Kessler. Well, it's just a coincidence, I think, that, you know, I work with the Tribune Review. Well, Kimberly Kessler, and in the story that is now her, she was going by the last name Sybert, S-Y-B-E-R-T. She is originally from Pennsylvania. Her name's Kimberly Kessler. And I was trying to look up some cases to cover for the work that I do with the Tribune Review. And I happened upon Kimberly Kessler's name, and she's from Butler County. Well, that just happens to be where my parents live now. So it was a case that was fairly important to me. Started looking into it, could find no information. Finally happened upon a phone number for what I believe was her sister. Called it, left a message. About 5 days later, a woman calls me, professing to be Kimberly's mother. And as, once again, if you've read this in the discussion group, you already know where I'm going. If you haven't read it yet, I'm going to tell you. The discussion did not go very well. I've had exactly 2 bad conversations since I started Unfound. One was a little over a year ago, and then it was the one that I had with Kimberly Kessler's mother. I'm pretty sure it was her, and in fact, afterwards, I did like some reverse engineering of the information and found out that it was her because I saw the phone number that she called me from. But she wouldn't give me her name, wouldn't tell me any details about how Kimberly disappeared because there's not a lot of information out there. Shannon, I have a theory, and I'll get to that. So I'm talking to this woman for a half hour, and the more I tried to be compassionate with her, the more defensive she got. That is the truth. And I would never lie about anything like that. And I could tell you this now. I could have never told you this if this story didn't happen yesterday. That is something that I would have had to have kept in me for probably the rest of my life until I got to actually cover Kimberly's case. But of course, that's not going to happen now. But I feel like I can tell all of you now. And back when that happened in April, I posted something in the discussion group, and then I erased it because I thought it was unprofessional. I was just exasperated. Of course, at the time, I didn't know what kind of person Kimberly Kessler was, although I had an inkling. Why did I have an inkling? The reason I had an inkling, because if you go to her Namus site, she has an alias that is nothing like her real name. Some people, okay, there's John Smith. He might go by Johnny or John or something like that. Well, Kimberly Kessler is a real name. Her alias was Pan Kleiber. P-A-M and then Kleiber, K-L-E-I-B-E-R, I think. So her alias was nothing like her real name. Well, that caught my attention. And then this interaction I had with her mother, by the end of the conversation, she was doubting who I was. She started accusing me of scamming her and thinking that I wasn't who I said I was. Even though I gave her the website name, my name, the name of the show, where she could find it on Facebook, I gave her all the information. Of course, she knew my phone number, being that I'm calling her from my cell phone. Gave her all this information. At the end, she says that I'm trying to scam her. She hung up on me. And that's when I went right to Facebook and was a little exasperated, then deleted it. Well, then I found out what the mother's real name was, and I just figured, well, this is going to be one of those things we're just never going to be able to do. All right? And you should know the other bad conversation that I ever had regarding Unfound was also with the mother of a girl who disappeared, but I think that that situation was totally different. In that case, I think that woman is just a little bit of not a very good person. Okay. Whereas now, when I look back at this conversation I had with Kimberly Kessler's mother, I have to tell you something. I believe that she knew exactly where Kimberly was. Okay. And I think that she knew that Kimberly was in Florida, and I told her that I live in Florida. So I'm wondering if she actually thought I was a cop, a detective who was looking for her daughter and was posing as a missing persons reporter. And there is a big part of me believes that Kimberly's mother knew where she was for a while. And she got worried when somebody started calling looking for her. Because you should know that Kimberly is wanted on charges in Pennsylvania. She has a warrant out for arrest in Pennsylvania. And she ended up getting a fake name from some girl who died years ago, and I didn't write down all the information. But now that I look back at that conversation now, that makes a lot of sense. The reason that she was so outrageous with me is because she didn't want her daughter to be found. She wanted it to go away. She wanted her daughter this is just a theory. I have no idea if this is true or not, but it would make that conversation I had with her back in April make a lot more sense. It really would. Now here's the thing. Now here's the difficult part, and so if you're all new to this, that's what I wrote in the discussion group. And that's where I ended. But I have to tell you, and I'm always going to be honest with you. All right. Never going to perpetrate any lies on my listeners. I'm never going to mislead them and everything. If we're going to talk about things, we talk about them completely and honestly. All right. And that's the way I handle my life. I'm really wondering if me calling her mother and then Kimberly causing this woman to disappear is not a coincidence. That has gone through my mind. What are the odds that I talked to her mother, track her down? Of course, she technically called me. I called her sister and left a message. At least that's what I think happened. And then the mother called me back from a different number. what's the coincidence that Kimberly's been missing since 2004? Out of the blue, 14 years later, I call her mother. And then less than a month after that, Kimberly is suspected in causing some coworker to disappear. I don't know what the odds are of that. And Kristin, I'm not blaming myself. How could I have known? But there is a scenario that goes, and I have no idea if this is true or not. All right. I'm completely speculating at this point, but the coincidence is a little too rich for me. Is it possible that after I got off the phone, Kimberly's mother calls her and says, there was some guy from Florida looking to do a story, looking to do a story on you, but I suspect it's a cop. And guess what? He says he's in Florida where you are. So Kimberly starts getting worried and says, you know what? I'm going to have to go on the run again. I'm going to have to change my I'm going to have to change my identification again. I'm going to and maybe I can steal the identification of this woman that I'm working with. That has gone through my mind since yesterday. No proof of that. Now, I know that somebody asked me, am I going to call the cops in Pennsylvania to tell them, how I had an interaction with her mother last month? I'm thinking about that. All right. And of course, this is going to be very public and everybody's going to see this. Anybody that goes to YouTube or watches this on Facebook is going to see this. So maybe they'll be contacting me. Very possible. But I'm considering it just to make sure, that I'm covering all my bases. But I want you to know, for the record, I had no idea that Kimberly had any warrants out for her arrest. Never knew that she did anything illegal, even though I knew that she had an alias that wasn't anything like her real name. All right, that made the question marks, all the things go off. But for the record, I had no idea there were any warrants out for arrest in Pennsylvania, or if that was the case, I probably would have never even looked into the case, probably. All right, so there's that. So, Becca, it could be that the coworker called the police. Maybe he suspected something. Very possible. I just have a hard time. I say it on the episodes. I don't like coincidences. All right. I'm not saying they don't happen in life, but I don't like coincidences like that. We're just after 14 years. Suddenly, I'm calling to find Kimberly Kessler, and right after that, she pops out of nowhere after 14 years. Pops out of a box. So I'm going to continue to think about that, but I do not feel guilty or anything else. I hope that this coworker of hers is still alive. I hope it's just nothing like that. I don't know, but that happened, and this is a national story now. And this is the way just like with Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman's case from last month, you never know when you're doing a program like this, you never know when something that you've covered or somebody you've talked to is going to, pop up in the news, or something is going to break. Of course, Payne Lindsay knows all about that with Up and Vanished. Some other podcasters, of course, know a little bit about that. You just never know when those things can happen. I just think that it may be in this case that my phone call to her mother might have started a string of events that led maybe to Kimberly being caught, but only because she might have done something to this coworker. And she was looking for a way to scramble out of it. I just don't know. Or I may be totally wrong and her mother really never did know where Kimberly was. I think that that's all going to go out. The public, what's the information that's in the public says the family had no idea where she was. Who knows? When you made the initial post, Beth says, I actually thought it was about a different missing person. Well, that's interesting. Lois, there's no telling what else she was done in 14 years. True. She might have caused some other people to disappear. Jonna, freaking crazy. Jonna, yes. And Johnny, being that we covered your sister's disappearance back in January for the Trib, that, I was looking to do Kimberly Kessler's case as one of the stories with the Trib. Of course, that's not going to happen now. So I'm guessing that Florida's going to want a piece of her. She did something to this woman down here. Pennsylvania's going to want a piece of Kimberly, meaning that she did what she did up there. And I'll keep you all posted if I find out anything that maybe is not in the public sphere. So there you go. That's my story regarding that. And all of you know that saw that post before I deleted it, how ticked off I was and just upset and a little demoralized and everything, because I knew that I was trying to help this woman, and the more I tried to help her, the more it didn't seem like she wanted to try to track down her daughter at all. That's a fact. That's a fact. And like I said, second time that's happened since I started Unfound. What was her warrant for in Pennsylvania? Theft, I think, ID theft, things like that, John. I don't think it was anything violent. I don't think. Shuri, thoughts on Ebby? Let's get to Ebby's, and I have to admit, I'm not totally sure. I've heard her name pronounced a couple different ways, so if I'm pronouncing it wrong, please for me. Ebby Stepok. She has been found. That was a disappearance. And I want you to know, before I say anything on this, I'm not an expert on that case. Okay? I probably know less than a lot of you do. I'm just going to point out some things that caught my eye just from reading the case and what I think I've learned about it. I read something that said, let me just go to my notes here real quick, and I can't print them out, so I have to put them up on my screen. She was found in an underground pipe. Is that right? So she wasn't found buried. She wasn't found in a pipe that was above ground. She was actually in a pipe that was underground, like it was buried and they had to dig it up. Is that that seems, and I once again, I went back today and read about it. She was claiming that some guys raped her and one of them filmed it, but then she was talking to her father. She was supposed to meet with her father, but it seemed like maybe she was having some sort of mental episode or a mental breakdown or something like that. And then she never, of course, met him. They find the car, disappeared. They go searching for around the car, but then eventually being found yesterday or today, being maybe identified today, that she was in that area in the first place. I have to tell you, once again, I am not an expert, and I'm sure, Web Sleuths or somebody knows all the ins and outs of this case. Yes, Pamela, they did identify her. Yeah, they did. Is it, the human mind is so hard. We understand so little about it, And I'm not sure that even though maybe we have medicine that can kind of calm mental illness or, fix bipolar disorders and everything, for the most part, a lot of it is still a mystery. And, I know that, I don't know when it was, but, you can go onto YouTube and find a compilation of news reporters who have had mental episodes in the middle of reporting for somewhere. They black out or they faint or, they have an aneurysm, on and on. You can find compilations of that on YouTube. I'm just wondering if that's what happened to Ebby. Could it have been something that was left over from her being raped before? Because my understanding is whoever did this, who did that to her, has never been brought to justice in any way. Just don't know. Let me just look at Emily, your brother called. She answered, but didn't know where she was. Right, Emily? Thank you. Right. She answered. She didn't know where she was. Stephanie, thank you for joining in tonight. They called, dropped. She hung up and was never heard from again. The friend said they called police 5 or 6 times before they came to the car. They complained about a small smell from the drain pipe. Police said it was sewage supposedly in the pipe. once again, we don't know the kind of state. I mean, it doesn't seem that she was in a 100% normal state. And if that is the case, if she was hallucinating or something like that, whether from some sort of mental illness or an aneurysm or a head injury that she suffered because of the rape, and it kind of affected, kind of like the Natasha Richardson syndrome, where you hit your head, you think you're fine, but then 5 hours from then your brain's bleeding, and you have some type of stroke or something. That could have happened to her. But I got to tell you, if that is the truth, that she was in an underground pipe, I'm going to guess she crawled in there. I know that sounds weird and things, but if she thought that somebody was after her or was hallucinating and having delusions or something, then there's no telling what people will do. There's no telling. And we all sit here and we're in our own right minds and we're talking back and we feel great. But we all know that if you've ever had a panic attack or something like that, how quickly out of control you feel. You suddenly know that your sanity, how it seems like your sanity can be on such a fine edge. Hold on one second. Got to let Kobe back in. Come on, baby. You're beautiful. Yeah, you know you're beautiful. You're a big, beautiful puppy. All right, baby. So there's no, so it's just, she didn't bury herself there. That's for sure. Well, she was the thing is, she wasn't buried. She was inside a pipe. So either somebody, she was in the pipe and the pipe got put in the ground, or somebody was able to stuff her way into this pipe where nobody could see her. So, sure, you may be right that she was placed there. Once again, I'm not an expert on it. We don't know how far this pipe was under the ground, how many feet she was in there, or anything else. It would seem to me if this was a pipe, there was never any blockage in that pipe over the years. I just, I don't know. Maybe she was put there, but I mean, are we to believe it was a combination of her kind of maybe losing her mind and running into somebody who put her in that pipe? Once again, it comes down to coincidences. We were just talking about with Kimberly Kessler. I don't know. I guess it's possible. But what are the odds of her having some mental episode and running into somebody who wanted to dispose of her at the same time? I mean, we're getting down to, very, very, very slim percentages. So there's another Sherry. We've got a couple Sherrys in here tonight. Sherry, thank you for joining in. So, being that she wasn't in her totally right mind before, in those last phone calls, at this point, I'm going to guess that she thought somebody was after her, maybe true or hallucinating, and she chose to go hid in that pipe and got stuck. I know that's not what the family would want to hear, or I'm sure they're just happy to find out where she is and, to bring her home. I just have some doubts whether there was any foul play right at this point. Now, as whether she really did get raped or not, that's something that the police are going to have to look into probably a little bit more now that her remains have been found. Emily says she was really in there. Beth, I think she was seen with people of interest in that park with her, but I might be wrong. Was her mental state in question? Well, not before that day, Kristin, but the people who talked to her that day, she said she didn't know where she was. She seemed to be not totally in her right mind, Kristin, and I'm no psychiatrist. Could she have handled the manhole cover? I don't know. Once again, I have not seen a picture. I heard she was seen with people at the park. That could be Janet. Once again, I'm not an expert on this. Now, as far as why the searches back then missed her, they said there was a smell coming from the pipe. Well, there's a lot of smells coming from a lot of pipes all over the world. So it's hard to say. You would have thought that they would have looked in there, but maybe not. I mean, searches miss people all the time. And, they'll have searches, and then a few years later, somebody will go back in that area, and it looks remains are there, and they've been there the whole time. It's just hard to say. Sherry, you're right. There's more questions than answers. But just from what I know about it, I am not an expert. The cases I know the most about are the ones I've personally covered. All the rest of them, I have general knowledge. I've read about them, but I have no more details than any of you do. I'm my first reaction right here is this was a young woman who had something mentally happen to her. She was hallucinating or something. She was paranoid, took over, and she tried to hide in this pipe, got stuck in there, and died. But I am open to any theory outside of that. I'm totally open-minded to all of it. But just reading it the way I did, when I hear that she was in a pipe buried underground, I just have a hard time understanding how else she would get there if she didn't do it herself. That's all I'm saying. They said there were a lot of bushes in the area of the pipe. Okay. Jay, welcome tonight. Good to see you. So that's Ebby Stepak's case. That's my personal opinion on it. I don't know if that was enlightening or not, but I thought we had to talk about it because I know that I've seen a lot of posts on Facebook about her disappearance. So I thought we needed to talk about it. And there's another family that has, their loved one home, but maybe, as Shuri just said, maybe more questions than answers now. But the biggest question as to where she is has been answered. Kristin, hi. All I know is the police said they had to have the manhole cover moved by the utility company, like it was so heavy. So I don't know about her getting it up and then being able to cover it back up. Yeah. Just don't know, Kristin. Shuri, any leads in the Bowen case or the Copper case? Well, it's funny you should ask that because Janet, who of course was one of the guests for the Jamie Bowen episode, is in the forum here tonight, and I know Al Copper's brother Matt was in the discussion group right before I came on here, Shuri. So those would be the people to talk to about that. I've personally not heard anything new, but I will tell you that I'm really pushing the Tribune Review to do a much deeper in Pittsburgh, to do a much deeper investigation to Al Copper's disappearance now that we've covered it on Unfound. And I think I'm going to be successful at doing that, but just probably going to have to wait some months before that happens. Let's move on. Let's take one more question, and then we're going to get to this week's case. Jeremiah asked me, what do I think about these private DNA sites that are helping criminals get caught? Of course, the number one known one now is the original Night Stalker. I'm sure this is going to be challenged in court eventually. I think that probably within the next couple years, you're going to have some cases that wind their way up through appellate courts into the federal level courts, maybe even up to the Supreme Courts regarding DNA and the privatization of it and who owns their own DNA and can these companies really just do anything they want with them once they get it, even if it means solving crimes that are many years old. And I just don't know the total legalities of it, but there is no doubt in my mind that somebody's going to challenge it. Well, Janet, you can message me personally about that, and we could talk about that. I would not put it on the public board right at this second until we've had a chance to talk about it. So about Jamie. Okay. But if people want to ask Janet questions in the discussion group about Jamie, please feel free to do so. So as far as the DNA sites go, I don't know. I think that they're going to be challenged, and it's just hard to say in what direction it's going to go. I'm just not an expert on it, but I am sure that the lawyer for the original Night Stalker and some of these other killers and rapists who got away with it for so long, who have now been caught, I'm sure they're poring over the law books, looking for loopholes and things like that. Is it good that these people are off the streets? Yes. Should we be able to take these people off the streets and violating their rights and at any cost like they maybe do in China or some other countries? No. All right. And that's the way I'm always going to feel about it. even if it means some of these cases go unsolved. That's always the way I'm going to feel about it. I always thought that the original Night Stalker would be caught before. If I lived to be 80 years old, I thought that he would eventually be identified, not caught, but identified. I was thinking he might be dead by that time. Little did I know that they would catch him this way. I thought it would be through DNA, but not the way they did it. So there's that. Can number 2 be the canal killer being caught 23 years later? Yeah, that guy. Yes, Kristin, right. Joanne, welcome tonight. Good to see you. Beth says a savvy lawyer will challenge it on behalf of a client. That's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. And as it should. These things need to be tested with the law. But I think until that happens, I think that states and local jurisdictions and the federal government are going to use these private companies to get this information. So, and so I guess maybe down the road, if things don't go the way, the prosecution's way, then you can see some of these cases being overturned, the people being found guilty and then being flipped. We might have to brace for that possibility. But I'm going to guess probably there are some things that are being violated right at this second. But it'll be the courts that figure that all out. What do I mean in China? Well, what I'm saying, Kristin, is that they don't exactly believe in human rights and things in certain countries like they do in the United States. That's what I'm saying. That was just one example. Maybe I should have used North Korea or something like that, where their methods of investigation and prosecuting people and investigating crimes and things are a little more brutal than what we do here. I guess that's what I mean. And I use China's example because I think it's a country that we're all familiar with. We probably don't know what really goes on in North Korea, but we have an idea about what goes in China. Of course, you can go on vacation there and everything, but you know how things are censored there. You know you don't have freedom of speech there. You surely don't have freedom of association, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to enforcing laws, their police there can do a lot more than our police can do here. That's what I mean. Depends on what their fine print says. Who owns genealogy? Complicated, I suppose. That's going to be a question that eventually, that's probably going to be studied, Jay. I totally agree with you. So let's get to this week's case. Speaking of a complex case, like Ebby's case, like Kimberly Kessler's case, the case that we are covering this week is the disappearance of Kristen Modafferi. She disappeared in June of 1997 from San Francisco, California. This will be our second, I guess, our first San Francisco case, but technically Kristin at the time lived in Oakland. This will be our second Oakland person case after Mandy Stokes from a few months ago. Kristin's case is fairly well known. I know that it was featured on America's Most Wanted. I think it was on Unsolved Mysteries at one time. It's, of course, 21 years old. And there is a lot of information. There's connections to that show, Home Makeover, to her disappearance, if you believe it or not. Herbalife, that company, and a murder that went on with that company is kind of tangentially connected to her disappearance. And we cover all of that in this interview that you're going to hear on Friday. Who is my guest? The Modafferis are a very private family. They don't do a lot of interviews, but luckily, someone who I already knew, and some of you probably already know, is close to them and actually runs the findkristen.com site. And that is Dennis Mann. If he sounds familiar, Dennis Mann was my guest for the Kent Jacobs case from last year, from August of 2017. Now, of course, that's a much newer case. Dennis has been on the Kristen Modafferi case since October of 1997. He has talked to most of the people who knew Kristin, has got on the phone or in person. He has gone to Thailand because of this case. He has gone to, I think it was Nicaragua because of this case. He knows the Modafferis very well. He runs findkristen.com. And I kind of knew when we talked last year about Kent Jacobs that Kristin's case name came up, and we said, well, we need to get together on that case at some point. Little did I know how much he has been involved in that case over these years. And so it's, as you can imagine, it's a really in-depth interview. I think a lot of what we talk about is on the site findkristen.com. But I think of course, the way I do it, and you have to imagine when I interview another reporter or investigator, the interviews go a little bit different. It's a little bit more, I wouldn't call it contentious, but I'm not sure if I totally agree with Dennis's theory regarding this case, frankly. So we throw through some things. I challenge him a bit. He challenges me a little bit. It's a little bit different, I think, than the inner kind of interviews and the tone that I do when I have family members on, and I think that's only appropriate. Beth says that's a sad case. I remember from Unsolved Mysteries. You've done a great job of digging deeper into those unsolved mystery and disappeared cases. That's what I try to do, Beth. I thank you for that. The only one thing I will say is that those TV shows are limited by time. Whereas with Unfound, as you know, if it takes 3 hours to cover a case, that's what I'm going to do. Lois, thank you. Jay, what was her last name? Kristen Modafferi, Modafferi. She's originally from North Carolina, but she was in San Francisco, Oakland area for the summer to take some classes at University of California at Berkeley. She went to work, got off work at 3 o'clock from a coffee shop. People thought she was going to the beach, but then 45 minutes later, her manager saw her and she was still in the mall, and she was walking with a blonde woman who to this day has never been identified. And she's never been seen since. You're going to hear a lot about a guy, his name is John Enuma, who is a colorful, violent character in all of this. The strange part about it is that a lot of women have come forward to say what he did to them, raped them, and other things. He's never spent one day in jail for any of it. And he's a free man right now living in Hawaii. So we talk a lot about him. But the episode is called Degrees of Separation, because Dennis and I talk about the FBI statistics that say that in particular, a woman, when she is harmed, she is most likely harmed by somebody she knows, and usually somebody she knows well. Well, Kristin was only in California for less than a month, so there were only so many people that she knew, probably less than 30 people. So you would think that whoever did something to her, and we're not to believe that she left her life or anything like that, but if something felonious happened to her, then it had to be one of that group of people who knew her once she moved to California. The problem is that John Enuma would not be considered to be one of those people. It was like and I even talk about the degrees of separation, like that old Kevin Bacon game. John Enuma, who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Kristin, and there's no proof that Kristin and John Enuma ever met. And that's something that Dennis has worked on for a long time. And we talk about that. And that is really why his theory about what had happened to her is a little bit different than mine. And sure, you're right. There's still always that 1%. You're right. You're right. And but you'll hear the interview. As always, we present the facts. It's you, the listeners, who get to decide what you think happened, who did it, when it happened. But as you know, I just do a little theorizing after it, and then I do a lot of theorizing on my blog at Patreon. And I can tell you the blog this week is going to be fairly long. Usually they're around 1,800 words. This is easily going to go past that. Easily. And I will lay out my own reasoning regarding her case. Dana, way to get in here. We're just about done here, Dana, but thank you for getting in here anyway. I appreciate it. So the case is the disappearance of Kristen Modafferi from San Francisco, California in 1997, June of 1997. The episode is going to be called Degrees of Separation. The interview is with Dennis Mahan, who has been on the case since October of 97 and has traveled the world trying to figure out what happened to her. And thank you, Sherry. You're getting a lot of comments in here tonight, and thank you for that very nice compliment. Thank you. So I hope you will tune in on Friday. Also on Friday, I should say, I'll be interviewing Stephen Huba from the Tribune Review. We have another story coming out Sunday, and it's the actual disappearance, but the finding of remains of a guy who worked at the Tribune Review. Coincidentally, his name was Daniel Niehaus. And so that is going to be in the Trib on Sunday, but you will hear my interview with Stephen on Friday as well after my interview with Dennis. And of course, I will link to the article at triblive.com when it comes out Sunday. So that is about it. What did we do? I showed you several pictures of Kobe. Talked about staying over here at my brother's. I talked to Alexa. Told you about washing clothes. My disc golf team lost, and I need a haircut. That's still true. The books, the shirts, Patreon, PayPal. We talked about my bizarre Kimberly Kessler story. And me, just a very strange coincidence, me talking to her and her mother, and then Kimberly Kessler is found to be a criminal. And we talked about Ebby Stepak, who disappeared in Little Rock, Arkansas, and just a little bit about that. Took a bunch of your questions, spectacular questions. And then we finished up with the disappearance of Kristen Modafferi, Degrees of Separation, coming out this Friday. Talking with Dennis Mahan. Also told you about the triblive.com article that's coming out about the disappearance of Daniel Niehaus from Pittsburgh just a few years ago. And there's Kobe. I'm going to show you one more picture of him. There he is. He wants to go outside, and I'm going to leave you with that. Once again, my favorite time of the week. Thank you for joining in. Had a lot of people tune in tonight. I hope you all have a safe couple days. You will hear me on Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, hearing me talk about with Dennis Mahan the disappearance of Kristen Modafferi, along with Stephen Huba. I'll be talking to him about the disappearance of Daniel Niehaus. I hope you all have a great night. Thank you for tuning in. If you just got in late, you will find this on YouTube later. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.